Hey everyone, and welcome back to Inside D2Football. We are back to a full house tonight, along with Matt Witwicky, Coach Poe, Justin Palizzi, Kay Ferg, Chris Ferguson, and Tony Nicolette. I am Chuck Bittner. We are here to unpack two very exciting and really fun to watch national semifinal games from this past Saturday, and start talking about and setting the stage for our national championship game coming this Saturday in McKinney, Texas. We'll have Ferris State taking on Valdosta State. It'll actually be the third time that these two teams have met each other in the finals in McKinney, Texas, with all the marbles on the line. We actually won't be talking a whole lot about that matchup tonight. We have some plans for some content that will roll out during the week. So stay tuned through our social channels and through the website. We'll be communicating some info about what we're going to do for a pregame show. Well, we'll break down our picks and analysis of what this matchup looks like, who we think is going to win the game. We're going to try to incorporate some picks and some comments from the entire D2 staff, along with some others that know these teams very well. So stay tuned for that throughout the week. Tonight, we're primarily going to focus on the two games that we got to watch yesterday on ESPN+. Guys, two really good games. I think we all expected the early game, Minnesota State at Valdosta, to be a really fun one to watch. I don't know that we really thought or expected the same thing with Slippery Rock at Ferris. And boy, did we get a treat, because that was quite something to see. So, let's start with the early game. Minnesota State, the Mavs had a magical run going to this point, winning with 3 straight playoff games, a couple games on the road, some really difficult conditions that they had to go through to get to this point, down to Valdosta, Georgia. Let's see what we have to kind of unpack this, and then we'll kind of just go roundtable and go through some of our observations. But I'll start with you. What were some of the things that you thought were the key takeaways in this Valdosta State victory to send them to McKinney?
Well, I thought this game played out kind of how we thought it might. Valdosta's speed was a big factor. But at the same time, Chuck, I thought, you and I chatted at halftime. Both teams had only had the ball on 2 possessions at that point in time, with both of them having long drives to start the football game. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. And, going forward with the game, I think the better football team won the game. But I tell you, Mankato had them there, at the end, where they were within that little range where get us within 7 to 10 points and we're real dangerous. It just, the clock struck 12 on that this week for the Mavs, but we weren't able to capture, Chuck, any local news footage, and we can't play the ESPN stuff. So we are going to go ahead and roll through some of the photos provided by Valdosta Athletics. And, during the game, Chuck, we had Hayden Eckern going ahead, throwing some really nice balls downfield in this one. And, it was a very physical ball game. We thought this might be the most physical game Valdosta had all year. And, here's kind of the guy of the moment. As we go ahead, Chuck, we talk about this game as it moves through, but Alfonso Franklin, 150 yards and 5 scores. Here's Sam Backer from Mankato, who went and scored on a long run. And, as we go ahead and we kind of move through, Joko Willis had, 8 stops in this game. We had, Vassar for Mankato ran nice inside, and that was kind of their bread and butter in the game. And, you see Sammy Edwards, who was very efficient, not turning the ball over, and going ahead and kind of kept moving the chains for them as well. And, Eckern ran a few times, but I thought Valdosta did a good enough job of kind of slowing, things down for the Mavs in the second half when they really needed to. And, Valdosta moves on.
So there was a lot of really interesting contrast in this game. I thought it was really interesting. You alluded to it, Whit. Only 2 possessions for each team in that first half. So I want to kind of go roundtable and get some reactions here. Coach Poe, I want to start with you. Have you ever been part of a game where your opponent opened the game, first quarter, opening kickoff, they go 10 minutes, actually a little bit more than 10 minutes, like 10 minutes, 5 seconds, and they score. So your defense has been out there for a long time to start the game, and then you have to respond to that. What are you kind of thinking at that point, after being out on the field that long? What are you kind of thinking that we need to do to respond to it?
Yeah, so I think it's two things, right? The first thing you're thinking is, hey, I need to put together a drive here, right? They've been on our defense has been on the field for 10 minutes, and now I got to put together a drive to kind of get them off the field, get them to rest. But you quickly realize that your possessions are going to be real tight, because if they continue to put drives together like that, you're not going to see the ball very much.
Yeah.
I've been a part of games where you get the ball two times, three if you're lucky in the first half, and it puts a lot of pressure on you offensively to execute and to play well, because if you know your possessions are limited, you have to come away with points, and you have to match what your opponent is doing. And so when that happens, it definitely puts a little pressure on you, and it can get in the head of the play caller a little bit. It's really important that you kind of stay the course with it, and you stay to your game plan, whether that's your script or kind of your situational plays. You're not going to make it all up in one or two plays. So you got to be strategic with it, but you quickly realize, man, you may not see this football but two or three times in this half. You have to be efficient.
Yeah, and it was interesting that it did change. What you and I were talking about this at halftime, and I thought, it kind of feels like the second half will be very different. And it turned out that both teams had more possessions just in the fourth quarter than they did in the first half. And it really kind of started off very differently. You kind of talked about the Sam Backer ripping off a long run early, to open up the second half. I think it was in the first couple plays of that drive. He goes 69 yards for the touchdown and tied the game. When they tied it at that point, were you thinking, boy, this now really is a place for Minnesota State to grab some momentum?
Well, I thought, Chuck, you alluded to the first half. I thought both teams were extremely patient with their approach offensively, not taking a bunch of deep shots, taking what was there. And my immediate thought at that point, Chuck, was, okay, let's see if the Blazers are going to punch back right away or not. And how's this half start to look like? And, then Valdosta goes ahead and goes on an 87-yard drive, and Franklin's getting loose again. I started to think at that point, this is a bigger problem for Mankato not being able to get a stop. Because, Chuck, they ended up in this game going 4 straight drives, Valdosta did, without getting stopped, and converted every one to a touchdown. And, at that point, I didn't think Mankato could keep up in that style of game, Chuck. That was my first thought, was I just don't know if the Mavericks are built this way. And, it turns out that, Valdosta was just too much offensively.
Yeah, I think they just needed one stop a little bit, or like one stop in the third quarter there could have really, made a big difference for the Mavs. They just were not able to get it. K-Ferg, from a fantasy perspective, how about the day that Alfonso Franklin had? I mean, is this a fantasy dream or what? All 5 of Valdosta State's touchdowns, 3 on the ground, 2 receiving. What a day for him.
Yeah, and I think it just shows the versatility of Valdosta, because last week they had, was it Ronnie Bullard had I think 3 scores, 2 or 3 scores. So I mean, they've been able to show a lot of flexibility in their game plan, and Alfonso was the hot hand. 5 touchdowns is a fantasy wet dream. So yeah, absolutely.
But you know what, Ferg? That also brings up something that their other running back, Blake Hester, actually has more carries this year, and has scored a whole bunch of touchdowns, and he's been dinged up a little bit, and so it's kind of like they're able to go ahead week to week. Alfonso had a huge game against Delta. Then you go ahead and you see, for example, when you looked at the post-game presser, after the Miles game, Esser was the one who was up on the podium with Tremaine. I mean, that's the way they've gone back and forth. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when this season started, there was Bud Cheney, who I thought would be getting a lot more carries, and he kind of sort of took a backseat to those 2 guys. And he certainly got some burn as well, but the depth that they've been able to show, you kind of need that at this point in the season anyway. And here they're just riding the hot hand. I mean, that's what this has sort of turned into too.
Yeah, I agree, Ferg, and that depth is really important because I think Whit kind of mentioned Hester's been a little bit dinged up. He went off the field with what looked like a lower leg injury last week. Now, he did come back in and played a little bit more in that game, but I think that they were pretty content to go with the hot hand yesterday and try to get him some rest where they could. But we also mentioned the name here a couple times, which is Rodney Bullard. Now, he left this game, I believe it was still in the first half, Whit, and I don't think we saw him the rest of the way.
He got I don't know if you recall the opening kickoff. He took it back for, I don't know, 30, 40 yards. He had a nice return. And then I don't recall seeing him the rest of the day. So I know that he has been going through some injuries throughout the year because there's been times where he's not in the lineup. And Chuck, that kind of further speaks to what I thought was their ability to be patient offensively, because what we saw a week ago, Ferg, I mean, you recall once Virginia Union started to commit to stopping that run and bringing up some bodies, they were hitting Bullard over the top like it was a video game. And Mankato, that wasn't really the story in this case here, but I thought that they were just super patient with their approach, and I was really impressed by that. Tony, you had a chance to kind of tune into some of this. Mankato was able to have their way at times in the run game. Did you think that the Mavs would be able to still keep up, or when you were able to see, were you impressed a little bit more on the other side with what you were seeing with Valdosta?
No, and I think the keep up question is the right one, because I think as I watched the game, and like Chuck alluded to, I mean, for Valdosta to open the game with a 10-minute possession, that's the other side that you were expecting to probably be more dialed into that. And then, they trade touchdowns. And I think once Mankato had to stall on their second possession and end up missing the field goal, I think at that point, Valdosta, you could almost kind of just sense that, okay, like we can play whatever pace anybody wants to, but we know we can score pretty much every time we have it. And we've now made them question themselves of whether or not they can keep up with us. So even if they play a pace that isn't necessarily fast and explosive, doesn't matter. Valdosta felt confident that they were going to score the ball every time they had it. I don't know that Mankato, if I could sense that they really believe they could score every time they had the ball. And I mean, if you look at it, it kind of ended up playing out that way. I mean, for as much as they had lengthy possessions, other than kneeling it out at the end of the first half, Valdosta, on their first 4 legit possessions, scored 4 touchdowns.
Well,
and,
guys,
and you just never got the sense that Mankato would be able to match that.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because Todd Hoffner kind of talked about that a little bit in his post game. We're going to take a look at that in here in just a moment, guys. But I do want to go ahead. With Jermaine Jackson, obviously there's a piece to this story, in my opinion. That first year, Valdosta, was 5-6. I mean, we were talking about it quite a bit on our show, and they went through some tough times there. I mean, there was people who we're kind of looking to not have Jermaine Jackson be the leader of that program anymore. And so for him and for their staff to have fought through this and so forth, here's the post game. And they get the shower right there.
No, Whit, you're absolutely right. It is a big part of this, and it's got to feel so vindicating for Coach Jackson because he is doing the job he was hired to do. Right? He was picked among some really good candidates, by the way. We won't mention names, but there were some really good candidates that interviewed for that job, as you would expect, because it's Valdosta State. He was picked because he had a plan to fix their defense. Because Valdosta being bad on defense in his first year in 2022 started the year before. Let's be honest about that.
Yeah.
He was hired to fix that defense. He's actually told the story a couple of times about, like, when he was in his interview, they asked him, what's going to be your plan to stop West Florida? Right? Because West Florida had so much offensive prowess in those years. So he is now making good on the plans and the promise that he laid out with the sugar packets and the salt shaker. He's told that story about diagramming defensive schemes on the table when he was at dinner, which I think is really cool that he shared that.
Yep.
And he's now making good on those promises and those plans that he had, because they're one of the best defensive football teams in the country right now.
Yeah, and you know, we've talked about it on this show. We needed for this season to play out longer for us to really see who this football team was against some better opposition. And I think we're seeing that. Coach Jackson talks a little bit about this in the post game, and then we'll go to Coach Hoffner and kind of take a look and listen.
Corinthians 3:6 says, I planted a seed. Apollos watered it. God's been making it grow, man. These guys bought into that back in August. And that's kind of been our theme of watering the seed. Obviously, we've been doing that all season with every game we've played. These men and women in our locker room have been successful. We have not lost, obviously, to this point. Very, very proud of our guys in the locker room for playing for the man in the helmet, not the logo on the side of the helmet. Also very proud of our staff and our coaches, our support staff. It takes a lot of people to get to this point. We aim to be second at this press conference all the time because the advancing team is second, and here we are. I'm from Houston, Texas. We got a couple flights booked on Wednesday to Texas. We're going back to the Dallas area, and we're excited about being there. We'll enjoy this one for the next part of the day, and then we'll get ready to take on whoever we might take on tomorrow.
Now, since they were the early game, obviously they didn't know at that point who they were playing. But, boy, I tell you, a lot of energy in Tremaine, and a lot of, you know, I'm really pleased for them and kind of where this has become, and for them to reach the championship game. Let's hear Coach Hoffner.
Before we move on to Coach Hoffner, because I know he had some good comments too. Did you guys get to see Coach Jackson's on the field interview after the game? He was very emotional. He was very emotional, as you would expect. You know, it's a huge moment, but he was very emotional. And it was very raw and very genuine. So it was good to see that.
Well, and you know, Tremaine talked in the television post game with ESPN about his grandmother, who had a big part in raising him, and she had passed away a few years ago. And you know, they asked, you know, about mom and stuff like that, and you could tell it kind of hit him right then. And it sure would me too. So I was just watching and it hit me. So, but let's listen to Coach Hoffner, and you know, after the Mavs' tremendous run that they went on.
Yeah, a hard-fought battle. I thought we came back and tied the game in the third quarter. Things were feeling good at that stage of the game, but you know, this Valdosta team always has a response. They came out. At one point in time in the game, they were 4 for 4. They went 4 drives to start the game. They scored touchdowns in every single one of those drives. And that was a bit much for us to overcome. There was a point where it was 28-21, and I told some of the guys on the bench, I said, if we score, we're going for 2, and we're going to try and end this. So, you know, we knew what we were up against. Great Valdosta team. Wish them nothing but the best in the national championship game. But
that would have been interesting if that had happened, guys.
Right?
Something tells me we might have been talking about that a little bit. A lot.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's fun when coaches actually do genuinely let you into their mindset a little bit, because, you know, a lot of coaches are very guarded and they're not going to say things that openly. I always appreciate it when coaches do kind of let us in inside a little bit, that's what he's thinking, because it kind of lets you get a feel for how he's managing the game at that point as well. You know, because it's just the awareness that they're going to have to be very aggressive and they're going to have to take every opportunity because they're having so much difficulty getting Valdosta State off the field.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So a really fun game to watch. I actually thought, you know, this probably deserved to be more like a 1-score game for Minnesota State. But a great performance for Valdosta, and they will move on to the national championship game. Guys, before we move on from this, any other points, observations from this game you want to make before we go on to our afternoon game?
I just want to mention like you mentioned, the time of possession to start the game. Like last week, Valdosta spent 8 minutes in their first scoring drive in the first quarter, so they burned about half of the quarter on offense, and they took even longer this time. And I just found that particularly interesting because they can sort of play keep away with the other offense.
Yeah.
The other thing is 21 points by Minnesota State is the second most points scored by an opponent against Valdosta this year. So that in itself is an accomplishment, and that's also testament to how good Valdosta's defense has been.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. All right. Well, it certainly was a fun game to watch, but let's move on to the afternoon game. Man, this was quite something. Slippery Rock scores 38 points in the first half of this game. And then Ferris recovers and shuts him out in the second half. 38 actually ties the most points that Slippery Rock had scored all season in a game. So it was pretty remarkable that they did that in the first half. But Whit, I know we actually do have some highlights of this one. Do you want to roll the highlights and kind of talk through that, and then we'll just roundtable this and go through?
Yeah, and Chuck, before we do, we all come into this game thinking, okay, based on what we had seen in the last, a handful of years, SR1 team goes and plays, especially a fire-breathing dragon like Ferris State, and we're thinking, okay, this game is going to be, the average last 5 games have been about an average of 30 points per game difference with SR1 and some of the others in the semis. And boy, I tell you, Slippery Rock didn't get that memo. They came out and they were playing with energy. And Ferris State even commented in the postgame, man, we were flat. I mean, they came on out. And at the same time, Ferris State, Chuck, they're coming into this after having just played the national champion Harding and frankly destroying them. Taking the number 1 offense in Division II, UCO, shutting them down and putting 78 on them. If you're Ferris State, you're coming into this game thinking you're pretty darn good, and you got everybody saying you're going to win this game by a bunch. And man, this is not how that game played out. And you see Slippery Rock attacking right from the beginning here. And Chuck, this was the kind of the surprise to me. Logan Ramper had a monster day. Number 2, you see Ferris turn over the ball. This is kind of uncharacteristic for them of late. They turned it over 3 times in the first half. Justin Payout gets a pick 6 here for Ferris, probably at the right time, because boy, the Rock was scoring a bunch, and 21-7 at the end of one quarter. I mean, I had said, you know what, Ferris or Slippery Rock needs to make it through the first quarter. Because of the way the other games had gone with Ferris, they made it through the first quarter all right, 21-7. You see them continue to attack downfield, and I was really impressed, Chuck, with how well Braden Long was able to hit targets in the passing game there. But then Ferris went ahead and got a play like that, a big kick return. And then Trinidad's doing his thing, looking like Lamar Jackson at our level. I mean, my goodness. I mean, that's a Madden move right there. And Slippery Rock is still up, Chuck, as we go into the second half, 38-27, if I'm not mistaken. And then all of a sudden, some turnovers start happening for the Rock. They kind of forced that one in there after taking 3 points off the board, which I would have done also. And, then you go see Trinidad still doing his thing, and he's such a tough defend. And Ferris is kind of slowly moving back. Ferris outcompetes the Rock for that ball right there. A little bit underthrown. And 2 big turnovers, Chuck, inside the 10. And, as we go ahead and we move through, then all of a sudden Cannon Katzer hits you. And he is a running back that's really come on for them, similar to Alfonso Franklin with Valdosta. And then more Trinidad Chambliss, and the fans are going crazy so much they decide to come on in the stadium. But last-ditch effort here ends up being a pick. The Rock, I thought, was playing a style, Chuck, in this game that they had to kind of take chances with that. To really be able to, they didn't go in there trying to be close in this game. They were playing to win this football game. And I thought that was really impressive. I know that they come up 10 points short. And I know Braden Long throws 4 picks, but Chuck, I got to be honest with you. Him throwing downfield, getting big chunk plays, getting scores is what had them in this game in the first place. And that's why they jumped out to that big lead. I know he had 4 picks, 2 of them were tip balls. But man, I thought the Slippery Rock offense was really, really impressive. That was my take, Chuck.
Well, he also had, almost 400 yards passing. He was just making plays downfield. At one point during this game, the only pass defense that Ferris had was to interfere and hope they don't get called for it.
Right.
They just could not stop anything Slippery Rock was doing. Logan Ramper, a name that you mentioned, he has just been a beast throughout the entire postseason run for Slippery Rock. He's a good player throughout the regular season as well. He probably has had as good of a postseason as anyone in this entire tournament this fall. He's just been an amazing weapon for Slippery Rock. And yeah, I think it's a little bit of shame that for Braden Long, the story will kind of be those 4 interceptions, but I agree with you, Ed. They're not even in the game without him hitting those shots downfield because they, as you would expect, they did have trouble establishing a consistent running threat. At times, they made a few. They had a few carries there with Dries Lawrence and Dior, but they couldn't establish a consistent run, and we didn't think that they'd be able to. So, hitting those shots downfield was what made them aggressive in this game, or else it gave them a shot. But I really want to go back to that first possession of the second half. So Rock has the lead, and you got to figure if you're Ferris in the locker room, you're talking about, look, we got to get a stop. Let's get a 3 and out to open this second half. Let's get the ball, let's get on the score. Completely different ball game. Well, Slippery Rock goes on a 6-minute drive. They get down in the scoring position. Now the Bulldogs stop them on downs. Slippery Rock kicks the field goal. That's when Ferris got called for the leaping penalty. Slippery Rock takes points off the board. I think it was the right call. Tony Anise said in his post game, I think any coach makes the same decision. It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But they take the points off the board. Now, Tony, the Bulldogs really, really well. I kept watching parts of that game thinking they need something. They need one kind of seminal moment that's going to turn the game for them. They need something that's going to swing the tide, create the momentum. And it just felt like when Slippery Rock turned that ball over after taking the field goal off the board, were you kind of thinking, man, that might be the play that the Bulldogs needed to turn this game?
Definitely, because this was one of those things where, obviously, you're right. I know Ferris quite well, and the level of explosiveness that they have, you really didn't see much of it in the first half, and part of that was because of exactly what Whit was talking about. Slippery Rock did such a good job of playing an aggressive style of football, but that also possessed the ball. And they did a great job of making sure that they not only had good, long, sustained drives, but they made them count. And then they forced the hand of Ferris where maybe they felt just a little bit of push. And then you saw the turnovers. They were aggressive on defense with the punch outs. They get Trinidad to make a bit of a mistake when they were trying to get some points maybe at the end of the first half that turned into the late field goal. Really, if you stop and think about it, for the better part of the first 3 quarters of this game, I really felt like Slippery Rock played the better game. And when you get to that point of the game and it's 38-27 and you've eaten a good chunk of, I think it was close to 6 minutes off the third quarter clock, and now you got a chance to punch it in, and you give up that turnover, I'm thinking to myself, that is such a massive swing because you go from the chance of being up 18, 8-9 minutes to go in the third quarter, and Ferris is down 3 possessions, and now they've taken it away and go down and get points on you. That was that seminal moment where you thought, oh, I just wonder if Slippery Rock can really hang on to this. And then to have them take the next possession and go down and do basically the exact same thing. That's at that point, even though they still had the lead at that point, I thought, I just don't see him closing it out. I knew Ferris was going to get a bunch of chunk plays and a bunch of explosiveness over the course of that second half that they really weren't able to do in the first half. Again, part because Slippery Rock did such a good job possessing the ball, but then also Ferris was hanging in there because of the big plays that they got on special teams and with the defense.
Yeah, and Slippery Rock has done that all year. They have been a ball control offense this entire season. So, but to see them do that against Ferris was really impressive. But I think the whole second half plays out differently if Slippery Rock scores a touchdown in that situation. Things could have totally fallen apart for Ferris at that point.
They could have. I'm not saying that they would have, but that certainly opens the door for it, right? And because again, think about what Slippery Rock did in that first half, and then to have them come out and do it again on that first possession of the second half, meaning that Ferris didn't have an answer for it. That to me changed things. And I think that's part of why Slippery Rock coming back late didn't go well for them, was because ultimately Slippery Rock was still in their base offense, and Ferris had to honor the run. And while Idris Lawrence didn't have a massive day statistically, he actually had a really nice game, particularly in the first half, of getting some chunk runs when they needed it, especially on third downs. There were some instances where they ran the ball, and we were able to keep the ball on, keep the ball on offense that I didn't necessarily expect them to be able to do. I think that's the one thing I took away from the game, was I was really surprised at how well Slippery Rock's offensive line played. I thought Long had time in most instances, and that's part of what was working so well for them, because some of the patterns that they were running were a little bit more of that deep shot where you need time to be able to let those guys get downfield. And they used their big-bodied receivers who had a physical matchup advantage extremely well in this game. I mean, I was thoroughly impressed by what Slippery Rock did in this game, and I think anybody that watched the game closely would have to say the same. And I think it's almost, you feel bad for Braden Long a little bit, just because he's so known for his accuracy. He only had 4 picks coming into the game. And Chuck, I hear what you're saying. A couple of them were tips, but like that first one that went for the pick 6 by Payout, that was a ball thrown behind his receiver.
Right. Yeah.
You know, if he puts that where it needs to be, it may not get the first down, but you don't end up with a pick 6 going the other way. When they took the points off the board and he threw the ball, that was that interception that kind of turned the game a little bit. He was really trying to fit it into a small window, but again, he threw it behind him. He threw it behind him. The window was there if he hits it. And then I thought the second one in the end zone, we saw the highlight of it earlier, and Witt nailed it. That ball was underthrown. You throw that to that back flag when you've got that bigger receiver out there on the edge. Either your guy gets it or nobody gets it. And for him to underthrow that ball and give the defender a chance to make a play on it, I think those are all 3 throws that he'd love to have back.
No doubt. And that's actually one of the things that he was really successful at all season. And going back to their game last week at California, I was chatting with our PSAC columnist during that game, just saying Braden Long's ball placement here is next level, because he was doing exactly that, Tony. He was doing an amazing job of putting the ball in a position where his receiver can get it and the defender cannot. Yeah. And unfortunately had a few where he just missed that yesterday, and it was very costly for them, but still really impressive. Justin, I kind of want to get your takes. Let's go back to, halftime here. Ferris is down at half, and Coach Anise said, hey, look, normally we're up at half, and we talk about, hey, we got to approach this like it's 0-0. And he kind of told himself and his staff going into the locker room, like, look, let's just do the same thing. We're down 11, but let's just talk about this being a 0-0 game and regroup and come out for the second half. But you got to think that they're talking about that first possession, really probably the first 2 possessions, because Slippery Rock's going to receive the second half kickoff. You got to think that their whole second half is built around, we've got to get a stop to start the second half. And then we get points on our first drive, and that's how we're going to turn the game around. When that wasn't happening, and you kind of see your plan for the second half start to slip away, what do you think's kind of going on there, going through their heads a little bit?
Well, I think you have to stay the course, and regardless of what side you're on, right? Like, so if you go into that thing and you're Ferris and you say in the half, hey, we got to take it 1 possession at a time here. You can't, the goal is that we got to get a stop and we got to get points. You got to do it. You got to take it 1 play at a time, right? Like, you can't go out there. You don't make 11 points up in 1 play, and you may have a bust, but you got to get it on the ground defensively and not give them a big play if they're going to score, right? Like, you have to break it down and just play every play and find a way to get that stop, find a way to get that turnover, get the ball back, and then see if you can come away with points, and then do the same thing again. But you can't look at, if you're Ferris in that situation, you can't look at, man, I got a half and I got a quarter and I got 6 minutes left and it's running out. You have to take it as, I got to win the next play and I got to find a way to make it happen. And I think conversely, on the other side of that, Slippery Rock, same thing, right? Hey, look, I'm not going to say we had them on the ropes, but hey, we're in a good position here. We played really well in the first half. We're not going to go out here to play to lose, but we're also going to go out here and be smart and win the next couple of drives and keep doing what we're doing. Because if you change what you're doing against a team like Ferris, who's been in these situations before and been in these games, they're going to come out and get you. And ultimately, you know, a couple of mistakes by Slippery Rock there cost them. But I think if you're Slippery Rock, you're saying, hey, we got to go out and get points, whether it's a field goal, whether it's a touchdown. You know, I think you made an interesting point, Whit. You said, hey, I would have taken the points off the board. I don't think any of us would have disagreed with that. And then you come away with no points and it's an interception in the end zone. And it's, well, dang, like 3 points right there is a big deal, right? Hindsight's 20/20, but you got to come away with points. So, and particularly in that situation to make it, that would have made it 11, right?
It would have made it 14.
It would have made it 4. It made it 2 touchdown lead at that point. They were already up 11.
That's right. Okay. All right. That's right. So, I mean, at that point, I don't know. I may have left the points on the board, but you'd like to think you'd score. But yeah, to answer your question, Chuck, you got to take it a play at a time. You can't get too in over it. I thought Ferris State did a great job of that. They came out in the second half and they just took it a play at a time. They took it a drive at a time. And before you know it, you give yourself a chance to win and you shut Ferris State out or Slippery Rock out and you score 21 unanswered in the second half. So you would talk about a phenomenal coaching job by Coach Anise in that second half and in that locker room to rally the troops, because you sat there at the first half and you're like, holy smokes, right? Like, oh, I think we even texted a little bit, Chuck, like, oh man, this thing's going a little off the rails here, you know? But I do want to say that, you know, I think for Slippery Rock to go up there playing in that environment on the road, great job by that coaching staff to prepare that team and give them everything they can handle. So yeah, great job.
Let's go. K-Ferg, you wanted to say something, and then Whit, do you want to go to the post-game pressers after that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. K-Ferg.
Man, like, so I wanted to be so wrong when I saw Slippery Rock got with the start they had, but it kind of goes back to just an observation in general. If you can't run the ball inside the red zone, you set yourself up for what happened there. And that really bothered me, you know, seeing that play and you know, yeah, once that happens, like, you know, you're the underdog, right? I mean, they saw what we said. They know the history, and you kind of not just get ahead early, but then you got to try to hang on for dear life. And when that interception happened because they couldn't run the ball, man, I'm like you, Tony. I can see exactly how that momentum sort of swings there, because then it's like, what do you do next? But, you know, definitely kudos to Rock. I saw that score and I'm like, man, I so want to be wrong. I want to come to the show and be wrong.
Right.
Unfortunately, we do not have that. So,
well, Whit, let's why don't we hear from Coach Lutz and what he had to say after this performance.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and pop in what Coach had to say.
Yeah, you know, it's tough. It's tough. You know, with our team, they never quit, they never give up. I thought we came right after them, and I'm really proud of our group. You know, we really believed we were going to win this game. And you question, you know, I know Ferris is a great team. Don't take anything away from them, but we came to their place, and, you know, we're up at halftime. And, you know, again, we made too many mistakes in the second half. You give them credit the way they come back, but we really believe that anytime we were out there, we believe we were going to win that game, and they played like it. You know, mistakes hurt us today. You know, Ferris's quarterback is just a tremendous athlete, and, you know, at the end of the day, they made more plays than we did. And you know, I thought we had a chance to win the game. Like I said, I'm proud of these guys, proud of Braden. We didn't quit, we didn't give up. We just kept fighting to the end.
He said they played like they believed they were going to win. Absolutely. I'm thoroughly
100%.
convinced that's absolutely how they played. When you look at how loose they were, how excited they were, how up they weren't tight. You can tell that they really did think that they were going to win that game, and they played like it. And they had the game plan to do it. They had the talent to do it. I think Ferris probably underestimated them a little bit. To be honest with you, they might have underestimated Slippery Rock a little bit. And Coach Neese talked about, you know, in the presser last week, you know, back-to-back beating Harding and Central Oklahoma. He's like, I don't know if I've ever had 2 games in the 400 some that I've coached. I don't know if I've ever had 2 games quite like this back-to-back.
Right.
And that was a lot to get through. I know that they won those games convincingly, but that was still a lot for them to prepare for, a lot for them to get through. And man, it's just hard to reach that same level, you know, week after week in the postseason. And when you run into a team that had a great game plan and was just as inspired as Slippery Rock was, you can see in retrospect how the Rock was able to do what they did.
Well, and Chuck, like Wesley's got a comment here about basically on our staff last week, we did not give them a chance to win that game, and 100% correct, Wesley. At the same time, we had good reason to think that way.
Sure.
We kind of explained that before. The average margin of victory in these contests leading up to this over the last 5 years is 30 points. So, there is something to that. Kudos to Slippery Rock for taking that as a rally cry and coming out and playing like they did. And I agree with this comment here. Slippery Rock did not leave anything left on the table. And I thought that actually as the game was ending, I thought to myself, you know what? They came out here and battled and did everything they could and took all the chances and the risks. And it was all worth it because they played this. They gave Ferris such a better game than anyone else, frankly, has given Ferris in quite some time. So we're full kudos to the Rock and how they represent. And I'll do you one further, Chuck. I think not only did they play well in here, but I think they're going to bring a different level of respect now into SR1 going forward with this type of performance.
Perhaps. Certainly for themselves, they did. They earned a lot of respect yesterday, no doubt about that. But, Whit, part of us not thinking that Slippery Rock was going to be able to keep this close, but part of that was historical perspective, right?
Sure.
And we've all been around a long time. We've seen Super Region 1, the best team in that region, not be able to compete with the best teams in the other regions. We've lived that year after year. So part of that's historical reference, but also a big part of that was us knowing who Ferris State is.
Totally.
And us having just watched Ferris State utterly humiliate an 11-1 MIAA champion.
Mm-hmm.
And then run our defending national champion off the field. So a lot of our skepticism about Slippery Rock keeping this game close also had a lot to do with who we know Ferris State to be.
Yeah. Well, and let's go ahead and listen, guys, to Coach Anise and his thoughts after the game.
Well, first off, give Slippery Rock a lot of credit. A lot of times people just want to look at inward and say, hey, we're Ferris State and have excuses for why that battle was such a great battle. There's no excuses. That's a super ball club. Coach does a great job. Their system was great. Their preparation was great. They had to play an extra playoff game than we did because we got a bye week. And they've just grinded through some tough challenges, and they've gotten better as the season wore on. And, that group had, I think they graduated 4 offensive linemen from last year's team, and they come back with this performance tonight.
Yeah. And I mean, there's no denying how well Slippery Rock represented here, guys. And Joe had a comment in here, Chuck. He said, couldn't be the same, said when Shepherd went to the Natty. Chuck, I'll let you speak to that a little bit.
Right. I mean, if it's happening once every 10 years, and by the way, the Shepherd won in the semi, Slippery Rock didn't. They represented extremely well, but they didn't win. When you get one good, close, competitive performance every 10 years, I don't think that's quite enough to say the region is elevating its profile. We need to see that they can compete a little bit more consistently with the best teams in the other regions, and it's just not there quite yet. But that's not Slippery Rock's concern. They only worry about the opponent that's in front of them. And as we saw, they expected to win. They believed they could. They believed they were going to, and they damn near did. So just living in the moment. Congrats to them because they did turn in a hell of a performance.
Yeah, and we'll all remember this for years to come.
So along with that, as part of the games yesterday, there were a couple of career accomplishments that we wanted to highlight. Adrees Lawrence, running back at Slippery Rock, went over 4,000 career rushing yards. Of course, a lot of those actually occurred at Notre Dame College, where he was prior to that program shutting down, and then him going to Slippery Rock. So 4,000 is a big number. Congrats to him for that. We're excited for him. And Whit, I think there was another career milestone that actually happened. Hayden Eckhern's last game with Minnesota State. He's had a great career there. Talk about this milestone for him.
Yeah, I mean, he has been a very consistent performer for them year after year. He went over 3,000 yards passing for the season on Saturday. He ends up, throwing for 24 scores or rushes for another 14 or something. So he's kind of on the down low, in a conference with the Northern Sun, where you've got your Jack Strands and you got your Wall Jaspers and other guys like that. He has been steady Eddie for a team that's kind of been in this mix. And you know what? Really solid finish and final year, for the Mavericks signal caller.
Yeah. And I know he was real emotional after that game because it was his last one, but a lot to be proud of there for him and his Mavs teammates.
Absolutely.
So some other things that happened during the week, in between our Sunday night shows. During the week, the announcement for the Gene Upshaw Award winner was made, and it was Marquise Fleming, the outstanding defensive end for Wingate. And if you're unfamiliar, the Gene Upshaw Award is presented to the top senior or graduate student lineman. Can be offensive or defensive, either side of the ball. And Marquise was announced as the winner during the week. So congratulations to him. Huge accomplishment for him. And he has had an outstanding career there for the Wingate Bulldogs.
Absolutely.
The Campbell Award. That's Braden Long. Of course, we've talked a lot about him already. And what a great quarterback he is. The Campbell Award is an academic award. It recognizes academic excellence. And this is something that is open to, I believe it's all NCAA football players at all levels. Braden was the only finalist from Division II. And Whit, he actually got to go to Las Vegas during the week. So think about this, guys. They beat California on the road last Saturday. So they start preparing to go to Ferris to play, a national semifinal, huge game, biggest stage he's been on. They actually flew Braden out to Las Vegas for the National Football Foundation Awards dinner, where he got to be there for the Campbell Award announcement, which actually went to Jalen Milroe, the quarterback at Alabama. That's him there with Braden. So really cool that Slippery Rock was able to make that work and get him out there for that, because I'm sure that'll be a very memorable thing for him to have been part of. And obviously with it being an academic award, just next level that you have a quarterback that can play the way he does and also excel in the classroom. Just outstanding. So really cool that he was able to be part of that. Let's do a real quick reminder, and then we're going to go back to the National Football Foundation Awards. But guys, just a quick reminder, the Harlon Hill Trophy, of course, we like to talk about this as much as we can. The Harlon Hill Award is presented to the top player in Division II football. A lot of names on there we have talked about all season long. So just as a reminder, your Super Region 1 finalist, Braden Long, quarterback at Slippery Rock, Shavon Wright, the running back at Charleston, who had a record-setting season there for the Eagles. Of course, in Super Region 2, Sammy Edwards, quarterback at Valdosta State, who's going to be playing for the national championship. And Jada Byers has had an outstanding career, but also another monster single season for Virginia Union. And Super Region 3, Trinidad Chambliss, man, looking really good as a finalist right now, and probably already the easy Las Vegas betting odds for 2025 as a Harlon Hill Trophy finalist and potential winner. And of course, Zach Zabrowski, our defending Harlon Hill champ, who also had another phenomenal season. And in Super Region 4, Braden Fuller, quarterback at Angelo State. And Reggie Retzlaff, the only wide receiver on the board, had a huge season among a pretty solid group of wide receivers across the nation. Reggie Retzlaff, a finalist for CSU Pueblo. That announcement will be made on Friday. Follow us on the socials and on the website for the exact timing of when that will occur. So we'll make sure that we get that news circulated as soon as we have a new Harlon Hill Trophy winner. All right, back to the National Football Foundation Awards. As part of that awards banquet, they inducted 24 athletes and coaches into the College Football Hall of Fame. Now, the Hall of Fame is actually in downtown Atlanta. It's actually very near Mercedes-Benz Stadium, if you've ever been there, where the Falcons play. College Football Hall of Fame is a really cool experience if you ever do get to do it. I saw it when it was in South Bend. I've seen it in Atlanta as well. Really cool thing. There were 2 inductees representing Division II. Guys, Danny Woodhead was one of the premier names and premier players in the game when I first started becoming really immersed in Division II. Danny played, I think it was about 2004 to 2007, if I have the years exact. I might be a little off there. But it's like kind of early 2000s into the second half of the first decade of the 2000s. Look at the numbers. Just an unbelievable career that he had at Chad State, just shy of 8,000 career rushing yards. Think about this, 181 yards per game for his entire career. That's just ridiculous. What you talked about, the touchdown, the total touchdowns, just unbelievable numbers that he put out, really put Chadron State on the map, had him in the playoffs. They won some RMAC titles during the years that he was there. Just an unbelievable college football player, probably one of the best players in the history of Division II. And then also went on to have some success in the National Football League as well, which is not very common for running backs coming out of Division II.
You're right.
So congrats to Danny on being a Hall of Famer. And Danny Hale made the Hall of Fame as one of the coaching representatives that made it, along with a couple others. Coach Hale spent all 25 years as a Division II head coach in the PSAC East. He is actually a Westchester alum and played there in the late 1960s. He was a defensive end. And then later coached at Westchester and had his biggest successes at Bloomsburg in the 90s and early 2000s. 25 years in the PSAC East, 14 PSAC East titles. Pretty darn good record. You can see his career winning percentage. 9 times he was the AFCA District 1 Coach of the Year. 10 times he was the PSAC East Coach of the Year. National Coach of the Year in 2000 when the Huskies made it to the national championship game in Florence. And how about that last bullet point? Also a United States Marine Corps veteran. And I know Coach Hale, number one reason why I became engrossed in the world of Division II football. Lots of reasons for that, but he's responsible for it. So I thank him for a lifetime hobby that he instigated for me, and just all around, just a wonderful man. You know, I said this about Coach Churchma. You know, Mel Churchma is just not someone who presents himself or carries himself as one of the best football coaches you're ever going to talk to. Danny Hale, very much the same way. You probably would not even guess that he's a football coach if you talk to him. He's very gentle, very soft-spoken, a very religious person. You just would not even guess that he's a football coach, and he wouldn't tell you that he is, because he's also not that type of person. So congrats to Coach Hale and Danny Woodhead, 2 outstanding representatives from Division II that made the Hall of Fame this past week. And a couple of other little bit of housekeeping. So AFCA named its Division II Assistant Coach of the Year. It's Roy Thompson Jr. He's a defensive coordinator at Ouachita Baptist. What a week he had, guys. 2 days prior to being named the Division II Assistant Coach of the Year, he was actually named the new head coach at Arkansas Tech. So congrats to him on being the Assistant Coach of the Year, and huge congrats on a much-deserved promotion to joining the ranks of the head coaches in the GAC. In a conference that he knows very well. Great pick. Great job by Arkansas Tech to get that deal done as quickly as they did. That job only opened up the week before. So congrats to him. Congrats to the Wonder Boys. We'll be looking forward to following his success going forward. Whit, I don't have a smooth segue for you this week. So just tell us about
I even gave you a little room to do it and everything, Chuck. I was kind of on the wait. Yeah,
well, it's been a long season, man. I'm out of.
I know. You're out of material apparently.
But are you wondering where to go? Are you wondering where to go?
Yeah, well, you know what? I have not eaten since pancakes at about noon today. So, man, when this show ends, this looks all kinds of pizza good. But as an ongoing reminder. Guys, people, you know, our sponsor, our corporate sponsor, Boss's Pizza and Chicken, still looking to go ahead and open up new franchising opportunities for people to be a franchisee. guys, they have a bunch of locations within the Dakotas, Iowa, Nebraska, looking to expand. So if this seems like a good idea to you, go ahead and look them up on their website. And, Chuck, we are going to look at the pizza of the week. Let's go ahead and get your thoughts, guys. Would this be something that would be up your alley? Or maybe not? Coach Poe, nacho cheese, mac and cheese, black pepper, cheddar, and bacon. Would you just try a piece, or is this something you would be up your alley?
That's a hard pass.
Okay, you wouldn't even try it?
Nope.
Wow, you're tough.
Nope.
Tony, how about you?
So I am the type of guy who will try anything. Whether I would crush this thing in its entirety, I can't speak to that. I don't typically eat that much dairy or that much meat anymore, but the notion that I would not at least try a slice, that's not true. I would at least give it a whirl.
Yeah. Ferg,
Nope.
mac and cheese on a pizza. Talk to me.
Man, that thing would crush me. So, all that cheese, man. But bacon makes everything better. So I might be tempted because of that.
For me, the nacho cheese, that piece in itself has me a little uncertain. I don't know what I was expecting there, but Chuck, how would you do with this?
I'm all in on this. I don't even need to sample. Just order it up, deliver it. I am all in. But I'm also the type of guy, if I go to a brewery, I don't do the little samples. I look at it, I make my choice, and say, give me a pint. I'm committing. I'm going to go for it. If I don't like it, I don't like it. But yeah, that's speaking to me, Whit.
Well, you know what, Chuck? I can shovel down Kraft mac and cheese with the best of them. Even though they found there's like lead in there, that doesn't stop me. But I don't know why I'm deterred by things like that. But
All right.
I'm just not sure how this would.
fiber.
Yeah, and the bacon goes good with that. The nacho cheese is my only sticking point. But now that I've said all this, we're gonna have to get some video of me trying this. So that's for another show. But speaking of shows. But that was the part where you talk, Chuck. But I'll talk.
I was just gonna say you're gonna leave me. We don't really know exactly what we're gonna do yet, so we'll be
tentatively planned.
We want to do something special to celebrate the national championship game, to preview it, give you as much insight as we can, bring in a lot of different perspectives on this. So our plan is that we will do a Thursday night special. Do a pregame show. We won't be doing this on Saturday before the game. We've done that a couple times. We want to make sure that there's a lot of time to get some visibility for it, to socialize it, and for the ample opportunities for people to see what we're going to put out. So we're going to aim for doing this on Thursday. We'll go through a lot of the normal insights and roundtable stuff that we do. We're going to try to have some interviews recorded for you that we'll mix into that as well. So look for that tentatively on Thursday. Again, visit the website. We'll have info there, and follow us on the socials for confirmation of when and how you can check this out.
And Chuck, you know what? I am up for a Thursday surprise. So maybe this guy is working on maybe getting a coach or two on that show. Now that would be something. You guys all got to tune in for that. I'm just putting it out there.
Well, I assumed you were going to talk about having pizza at the ready for that show, but
no, but you know what though, I did the pizza comment did kind of catch my eye here, Chuck. Matt talked about needing some fiber after eating a couple slices, and you know what? I'll be honest with you. When I'm eating pizza, that's never going across my mind at the time.
Yeah, actually, not true at all. It's actually quite the opposite, Craig. What Matt said is totally true. I need the fiber to go along with that. Some prebiotics and probiotics to make sure, but I actually have to be really careful with the grease. But everything that was on that screen when you were showing that pizza, those are all some of my favorite words.
Well, Chuck, moving away from food for a moment, we always get sidetracked, or maybe it's just me.
You're usually responsible, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Chuck, you got done writing a preview for the national championship game, and it will be a part of the right inside the program at the actual game in Texas. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's the second time that they asked us if we would be willing to write a short preview on the game. It's really kind of a scene setter. It won't go real deep on X's and O's. They don't have a whole lot of space for that. It's going to be very high level, but yeah, we have kind of the inside preview for the program, and then of course you'll actually get to see a full ad there for the Inside D2 Football program. Of course, you guys all know it. But it's a great opportunity for us to maybe land the show in front, and everything we do at D2 in front of some eyeballs that normally don't know about us and don't see it. So we were very happy to do that. Good opportunity for us. And so if you pick up a program while you're down there, you'll be able to see that pregame.
And you know what, Chuck? On the right side there, you guys may have seen this before. Brandon Meisner, our guy, came up with this last year for this preview. And on the right side, it's kind of a retro thing from back in like Sport magazine in like the 80s when they had a player watching a television, and it was like the magazine or what have you that the players read. It was kind of a shot at that, and Brandon redid it here as this is the show the coaches watch. I thought it was a really cool idea when he did it. There's a lot more to this than initially meets the eye. And I thought one of the neater things Brandon came up with production-wise, a year ago.
Yeah, he had some fun backstory to that, too. He created that, the whole thing. He did all of the design for it. He did the graphics. He actually staged that photo.
His neighbor next door.
With a neighbor. He staged the photo and did the whole thing. So real happy to see something that he put a lot into, and was very happy to he was very proud of the fact that we were represented in the program like that. So I'm very happy that we'll get to see that again this year.
Well, Chuck, for those who have not gone ahead and done this, what's wrong with you, first of all? I mean, Tony, how long have we been talking about this,
All season.
I know, it feels like it, and we only started it with a few weeks left to go before the playoffs. So guys, we need to get this subscriber count much more in line with our Twitter followers. So for any of you that are on Facebook who have not made it to YouTube yet, go make it to YouTube yet. And go ahead and like, subscribe, and all the other stuff the kids say we're supposed to do. And let's get this count up a little bit, guys. And, we're going to continue to have some content here. We got a few more shows left. So you can always go find it there as well, but just kind of wanted to mention that as something that we're closing out the season with. And along with that, Chuck, I want to give a special thanks here. 9 and 10 News, they do a great job of getting footage. I tell you, anytime I'm looking for some Ferris footage, they do a tremendous job, not just getting the Ferris plays also. They tell a story with their highlights, and I really, really appreciate that. Rob Bentley at Ferris Athletics, I mean, you can't say enough about the job he does. We've talked about it, guys. Some of the stuff they do with their socials is kind of one of the gold standards here in Division II. Valdosta State also got us some photos and has helped get the pressers and stuff like that. They're doing a nice job helping us. Taylor, as we go ahead, and I'm kind of, rounding this out, Chuck, Taylor Viles is with WCTV in Tallahassee, and he got that footage of Tremaine getting the Powerade at the end. So wanted to go ahead and kind of give a shout out to everyone who's helped us out along the way, Chuck, with everything on the show.
All right. Well, we brought up a few comments, a few of the more humorous ones throughout the show. There was a lot of early banter about some NFL games and some other things. I don't know that I saw a ton of questions for us or additional observations. But thank you guys for being in the chat. It's always fun to see you chatting with each other and having some back and forth discussion there as well. So I think that will be our show for tonight. So do like, follow, subscribe, all that stuff, and visit us throughout the week for some info about the content that we'll have for previewing the championship game. Most of us will not be on site. K-Ferg will be there on Saturday for the game for anyone who's going to be down there. For the rest of us, it's it's a long season and it's a pretty big commitment to get down there and be there for the game. So let's almost try to target about every other year to do that. So this will be a year that we will not be fully represented, but that means that we will do a post-game show Sunday night after the national championship game, and that will be our last regularly scheduled program for the season. We'll have a few other things that we talked about, but we'll talk to you during the week for a preview of the national championship game, and then we'll talk to you again next Sunday to celebrate a new national champion. So for those of you who've been with us all season long to this point, stick with us for a couple more until we crown a new champion. We'll see you for the next couple. Guys, thank you again for joining for the show, and we'll talk to you again soon.